Money is what.
Hello and welcome. You're watching the latest on DD India and this is News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Coming up in the next hour. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar says the disengagement process with China is complete. Delhi and Beijing have reached an agreement on LAC patrolling.
We have reached an understanding that we will be able to do the patrolling which we were doing in 2020.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is all set to depart for Russia's Kazan on Tuesday for the 16th BRICS Summit, the group's first meeting after its expansion from 5 to 9 members. South Korea goes on the offensive on intelligence reports that North Korea has deployed troops in Russia to fight its battle in Ukraine, terms the move illegal and summons the Russian envoy. And Britain's King Charles gets heckled by Australia's Indigenous Senator Lydia Thorpe during a parliament reception in Canberra during his first visit down under after becoming monarch. Well, first up, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set to depart for Russia's Kazan on Tuesday for the 16th BRICS Summit. It's the multilateral group's first meeting following its expansion from 5 to 9 members. The PM will not only take part in the summit, but he'll also hold key bilateral meetings with other top world leaders in Kazan, including Russia's Vladimir Putin. This is all to enhance India's foreign relations.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit Russia to attend the 16th BRICS Summit in Kazan. The summit, themed Strengthening Multilateralism for Global Development and Security, provides a key platform for BRICS nations to address challenges, review progress on existing initiatives, and explore future areas of cooperation. During the visit, Prime Minister Modi is expected to hold bilateral meetings with leaders. These talks will focus on strengthening strategic partnerships and expanding cooperation in crucial sectors such as trade, defense, and technology.
This is a multilateral event, though of course there is always a provision for bilateral meetings on the sidelines. We are currently looking into the overall program of the Prime Minister. There are a number of requests for bilateral meetings.
28 heads of government and 5 international organizations will participate in the summit. Prime Minister's attendance will highlight India's growing diplomatic and economic engagement with BRICS, focusing on enhancing multilateral collaboration.
The city of Kazan has been prepared as the focal point of the summit, with BRICS insignia almost everywhere in the city. The summit's agenda would include both regional and global issues and also focus on political, economics and humanitarian partnerships among BRICS member nations. Security cooperation would also be a key feature at this event, since the leaders will be here with their high-level delegations to talk about more issues.
Prime Minister Modi's participation in the summit reflects India's increasingly significant role in shaping the BRICS agenda, particularly in areas like economic collaboration, global governance, and multipolarity. India's stance is consistent with its previous calls for reforms in multilateral institutions, emphasizing the need for these bodies to address the contemporary challenges of emerging economies. This focus on reforming multilateralism and fostering a multipolar world was reinforced by External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar at the BRICS Foreign Ministers meeting in New York last month. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's attendance at the 16th BRICS Summit offers a crucial platform for advancing India's diplomatic and economic objectives. With a focus on reforms, global governance, trade and security, India's participation will reinforce its strategic partnerships with BRICS and further its role in shaping a more equitable, multipolar world order. Jessica Taneja for DD India.
And the Kremlin's already putting out information in terms of what's going to happen at Russia's end where this summit is concerned in Kazan. The Kremlin's foreign policy aide has disclosed that President Putin, during the course of the 2 days that the summit will take place, will be meeting, apart from Prime Minister Modi, China's President Xi. He'll meet Iran's President Pezeshkian as well as Turkey's Erdogan. He's already had a meeting with the UAE's president and discussed the Ukraine crisis in detail. So Ukraine clearly is going to figure very prominently where deliberations between the leaders is concerned during the BRICS summit as well. Now, India and Russia's cultural ties have been strengthened over the years. Students in Kazan have embraced art forms leading to various collaborations. DD India's Jaishankar has spoken with Angelica Day, a such student. Listen in.
We have with us Angelica Day. She's a medical student here in Kazan. Angelica, thank you for speaking to DD India. You've been living here for quite some time now. Talk to us about the cultural ties that you've been able to embrace while you've been here.
What I found fascinating about my city Kazan here is Kazan tries to celebrate all the cultural events that we celebrate in India, like the pujas, Durga Puja, Diwali, Holi, and also Ganesh Chaturthi, which we celebrate in the hostels as well. So I like the way people in Kazan try to celebrate the culture and tradition of India as well.
Right, and tell us about the significance of all of this and point out some examples to us if you can.
Kazan is a city where people from all religions, they stay together. Just like India is a secular state, I have seen that Kazan celebrates all cultures and traditions together. People from different countries, they live happily together here, and also people from different parts of the states of India, they're also living happily here. So that's a very lovely and a fascinating thing that I've seen from my first year of education here in Russia.
What's the one prominent thing about the Indian culture that the city has been able to embrace?
They like our festival. They like the food which we eat, because some find it spicy, but others find it very interesting. The way we cook it, the patience that we have while we cook it, and also they love Bollywood a lot.
Right. And Angelica, how do you plan to take this forward? You're a dancer. You've been part of many recitals. How does the future look like while you're here?
Since first year, I've tried to engage myself in different cultural events portraying the Indian culture. I am a dancer of Jaishankar dance style, and I've tried to portray this dance style all across Russia. In Kazan, we celebrate an event called as Den Inistrani Studentov, where students of different countries, they put up their cultural performances in front of the audience. I've been a part of that too, and in future, I will try to expand Indian culture as much as possible here.
Right. Thank you, Angelica, for giving us those details.
Thank you so much.
India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, has announced that India and China have reached an agreement on patrolling along the line of actual control, and with that, both nations have gone back to where the situation was in 2020 before the Galwan clash.
I think it's a good development. It's a positive development, and I would say it's a product of very patient and very persevering diplomacy. That, you know, at various points of time, people almost gave up. On the one hand, we had to obviously do the counter deployments, but side by side, we have been negotiating. We've been negotiating in fact since September of 2020, when I met my counterpart, Mr. Wangi, in Moscow at that time. The fact is, if we are able, as we now have, to reach an understanding regarding patrolling, regarding maintaining observing the sanctity of the LAC, then I think what it does is it creates a basis that the peace and tranquility, which there should be in the border areas, which there was before 2020, hopefully we will be able to come back to that peace and tranquility.
Also, while interacting at the NDTV World Summit, Dr. S. Jaishankar said that Canada's domestic politics has given space to extreme forces and allowed them to indulge in activities that impact bilateral ties, between India and Canada.
Canada has just they asked us to subject our High Commissioner to a police inquiry, you can say, and we chose to withdraw the High Commissioner and diplomats. They seem to have a problem if Indian diplomats are even trying to make efforts to find out what is happening in Canada on matters which directly pertain to their welfare and security. But look what happens in India. Canadian diplomats have no problem going around collecting information on our military, on our police, profiling people, targeting people to be stopped in Canada. So apparently the license that they give themselves is totally different from the kind of restrictions that they impose on diplomats in Canada.
Also, in the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, both countries are carrying on their fight with each other. Ukrainian officials have claimed that Russia attacked the Ukrainian capital Kyiv with several waves of drones for the second night in a row, damaging residential buildings and injuring at least one civilian on Monday. While the Ukrainian military said air defenses downed 59 out of 116 Russian drones launched overnight. The military lost track of 45 drones that likely fell into Ukrainian territory. And South Korea on Monday condemned North Korea's illegal involvement in Ukraine, urging an immediate halt. A few days ago, South Korea's spy agency had said that North Korea has shipped 1,500 Special Forces troops to Russia's Far East for training, likely to be deployed for combat in the war in Ukraine. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky also had mentioned of Pyongyang preparing to send 10,000 soldiers to Russia, calling for a strong reaction on North Korea's increasing involvement in the war in Ukraine.
North Korea's involvement in Russia's invasion war is a violation of UN resolutions and should be condemned as an illegal act by the international community. Furthermore, it poses a serious threat to our national security and the safety of our people. We strongly condemn North Korea's action and sternly warn them to halt immediately. Our military will take necessary measures to safeguard the safety of our people.
And further upping the ante, South Korea has also summoned Russian ambassador to Seoul to slam Pyongyang's decision to send thousands of soldiers, including Special Forces troops, to support Moscow's war in Ukraine. South Korean Foreign Ministry in a statement said that Korea's Vice Foreign Minister Kim Hong-kyun expressed Seoul's grave concerns regarding North Korea's recent dispatch of troops to Russia and strongly urged the immediate withdrawal of North Korean forces and the cessation of related cooperation. Also reacting to South Korea's protest over what it has called the sending of North Korean troops to Russia for deployment in Ukraine, the Kremlin said Moscow's cooperation with Pyongyang was not directed against any third country.
North Korea, Korean People's Democratic Republic, is our close neighbor, our partner. We develop our relations in all spheres. This is our sovereign right. Nobody should be concerned about it because this cooperation is not directed against the third countries. We are going to develop this cooperation further on.
Meanwhile, Russia's cooperation with North Korea was not directed against Seoul, Moscow's envoy told South Korea's foreign ministry. The Russian embassy said Ambassador Georgy Zinoviev stressed that cooperation between Russia and North Korea is not directed against the interests of South Korea's security after being summoned to the foreign ministry. And China's foreign ministry has said that it hopes all parties will work to de-escalate the situation following South Korea's statement that North Korea sent troops to Russia for deployment in Ukraine.
With regard to the crisis in Ukraine, China's position is consistent and clear, and we hope that all parties will push for a de-escalation of the situation and commit themselves to a political solution.
And still to come on the India News Hour. Harris and Trump in a dead heat across swing states, according to a poll survey done by a US daily. The West Asia conflict intensified with intense border exchanges between Israel and Hezbollah, while Iran complains to UN nuclear watchdog about Israeli threats to its atomic sites. We'll also get you updates on Cyclone Dana that is hurtling towards Odisha coast, as well as other weather updates from across the world.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, as the date for the US presidential election nears, just 2 weeks away now, the campaigning for the elections has heated up. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump remain in a tight contest across 7 battleground states, with just over 2 weeks until the 5th of November US presidential clash, according to an opinion poll done by a US daily. Democratic former prosecutor Harris led among key likely voters in Georgia 51% to 47%, while Republican Trump was slightly ahead in Arizona with 49 to 46%. Both findings fall within the plus or minus 4.5 percentage points margin of error in the poll, which surveyed 5,016 registered voters from the 30th of September to the 15th of this month. Harris, who became the party's candidate after President Joe Biden stepped aside in July, also had an edge in Pennsylvania, Michigan and Wisconsin, 3 states where she will campaign later on Monday, that is tonight, with Republican former U.S. Representative Liz Cheney. And Donald Trump has led in North Carolina and was tied with Harris in Nevada 48 to 48%. According to this Washington Post poll, the former president will hold a rally in North Carolina later on Monday after surveying recent damage from Hurricane Helene. Monday's findings from the Post and George Mason University's Schar School of Policy and Government echoed other recent polls that found a neck-and-neck race in the 7 battleground states ahead of Election Day, even as Harris holds an edge nationwide. This is also according to some other surveys. Overall, 49% of likely voters said they support Harris and 48% backed Trump. Among registered voters, Reuters Ipsos polling last week found Harris holding a steady margin, 45 to 42% lead over Donald Trump. And on that cliffhanger note, let's take you across live now to my colleague Shubhendu Ghosh joining us from New Jersey in the US to get an overview of how the situation is developing in this presidential race, just 2 weeks away from polling. Hi Shubhendu, the latest Washington Post poll suggests it's almost a dead heat across the swing states between Harris and Trump, with just about a fortnight left to reach the finish line in the race to the White House. Now, what efforts are both of them making to ensure that things swing their way?
Absolutely, Gautam. The last figure that you mentioned about the voter percentage, 48 to 49 between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, that really speaks volumes about a cracker of a contest that this presidential election is turning out to be. And the most of the actions are going to be centered around the 7 swing states of United States of America. And those are the priority for the candidates as the final few days of campaigning before the big election day on November 5th. As we speak, Kamala Harris, Vice President, is headed to Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin for the last-ditch effort in the swing states to push for an agenda. Pennsylvania is a key swing state, 19 electoral votes to be garnered and taken there. It has been broadly a bluish state, although it's swing. But if you look at the local elections, the local legislative bodies, we see elements of red as well. And they say when red and blue come together, it sort of turns purple. And that makes it a very exciting state as far as the swing state concept in elections is concerned. Donald Trump is headed to North Carolina. That's one of the states which suffered the worst impacts of Cyclone Helene, and the voters there have been talking about that their priority, other than any other issue, would be who is the leader who's going to make sure that the reconstruction work of their community can be taken up on priority. That's where Donald Trump is putting his weight. He's had an edge in North Carolina earlier. So in these last days, we see even within swing states, the leaders are aiming to do their best to garner support from the states where they have a slight edge over the other. But it is a neck-to-neck contest, Gautam, as we speak.
And what's the situation in New Jersey, where you are right now, Shubhendu? Because it has a significant chunk of Indian diaspora voters. How are they leading in these elections?
Yes, Gautam, we are in New Jersey, just an adjacent city to New York. And if you look at New York and New Jersey together, there's some 400,000 Indian American voters, Indian Americans who are based here. Their votes become hugely important. But Indian Americans as a community could not have imagined an election like this, where both sides, on one side you have Vice President Kamala Harris and her Indian roots. On the other side, there is very popular Donald Trump, his vice presidential candidate, his wife, Usha, and her Indian roots. So in that sense, there is almost like a disproportionate attention and interest on the Indian American community. They form about 1% of America's population, but their significance and the contribution that they do to the society in their professional work, and also this time
are both the sides making any special efforts to woo them as well? Are both the sides making special efforts to woo them as well?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Both sides say that they are the best candidate to take forward their concerns and agenda. So they're also really now spoiled for choice this time over Indian American community. And therefore, their priorities are also finding a great voice in the campaigns by both the sides. Both sides think that the Indian American votes will come out in large numbers for their support. But again, when we speak to them, this percentage that we've been talking about, like this 50-50 contest between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, we also see reflected amongst the members of the Indian community, but politically hugely significant, their voice in these elections.
And what that number, Shubhendu, 49 for Harris and 48 for Trump, has done is that made the campaigning by both the sides very contentious as well, and both the candidates have been attacking each other over issues related to their cognitive capabilities or competence. Now, how concerned are Americans about this fast emerging issue, and can we, just before the election, see some tests taking place as well?
Well, when we say that it is one of the most polarizing elections in US history, the reason also being that from foreign affairs, global conflicts, climate change, to really cognitive health of the candidates are in focus, and this has been there for the beginning of the year. And age
not without
is a
reason.
funny concept, because the older candidates, but not without reason, most certainly. And therefore, we also saw, in fact, earlier President Joe Biden stepping down from the contest primarily because of his health concerns. And the interesting part is that the advantage that Donald Trump seems to have got at that point in time seems to be turning into some sort of a disadvantage, because now he's older of the two. He's 78, and if he wins and he completes his term, if we assume that he's going to be 82, he's already the oldest American presidential candidate in that sense. So now Kamala Harris is using the same ammunition that Donald Trump used against Joe Biden. So although there are issues of immediate interest for the voters, as I mentioned, somebody affected by cyclone, jobs, security, and other issues, but on the back of their mind, there is a lingering concern whether the candidate of their choice is physically and mentally fit to lead.
All right. Well, let's see if this concern then develops into something that the candidates themselves feel the need to address in with a sense of finality. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Shubhendu Ghosh. Now, intense border fighting continues between Israel and Hezbollah. Anticipating a retaliatory strike by Israel, Iran has complained to UN nuclear watchdog about Israeli threats to its atomic sites. Meanwhile, hectic diplomatic efforts are on to ease the tension in West Asia. Also, on the other hand, hundreds of trucks carrying humanitarian aid have been making their way from Israel into the Gaza Strip. Here's more in this report.
Israel has intensified its operation in Lebanon against Hezbollah. Several strikes were reported against dozens of facilities and sites used by Hezbollah on Monday. The IDF released a video conducting strikes in the areas of Beirut, southern Lebanon, and deep within Lebanese territory. Prior to the strikes, Israeli military issued warning to residents to evacuate from areas close to Al-Qard Al-Hassan facility.
We will attack a large number of targets in the coming hours and further targets during the night. In coming days, we will also expose how Iran has financed the terror activities of Hezbollah and used civilian institutions.
Hezbollah also fired several rocket salvos at Israeli troops across the border. Explosions shook northern Israel as Israeli air defense systems intercepted a barrage of Hezbollah rockets fired across the border. The Israeli army said it identified 25 rocket launches from Lebanon into Israel. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will kickstart ceasefire negotiations to end the Gaza war in West Asia. This marks his 11th trip to the region since the beginning of the Israel-Hamas conflict. During his discussions with regional leaders, Secretary Blinken plans to stress the urgency of ending the conflict, explore post-conflict strategies for the Palestinian territory, and seek diplomatic solutions to the tensions with Hezbollah. US envoy Amos Hochstein, who was in Beirut for talks on a potential ceasefire, said that linking Lebanon's fate to other conflicts in the region is not in the interest of the people of Lebanon. He said that US is working with the state of Lebanon and Israel to bring a formula to end this conflict once and for all.
Tying Lebanon's future to other conflicts in the region was not and is not in the interest of the Lebanese people. We're working with the government of Lebanon, the state of Lebanon, as well as the government of Israel, is to get to a formula that brings an end to this conflict once and for all.
Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul-Ghaid said in Beirut that the League's priority was to achieve an immediate ceasefire in Lebanon. And he called for Israel's prompt withdrawal from any Lebanese territories it has occupied or entered. Iran has officially raised concerns with the International Atomic Energy Agency regarding potential Israeli threats to its nuclear facilities following escalating tensions between the two nations. Meanwhile, hundreds of trucks carrying humanitarian aid made their way from Israel into Gaza Strip via the Kerim, Shalom and Erez crossing on Sunday and Monday. Raghav Kumar Jha for DD India.
Unexpected things keep popping up in this conflict because even as we were speaking with that story, Israel's military has said a projectile from Lebanon fell in central Israel without air sirens activated according to protocol. That's again another thing to worry about. Now, India's meteorological department has predicted heavy rainfall in the southeastern state of Odisha in the upcoming week as cyclone Dara is expected to make landfall on the 24th of October. The weather agency has further added that the low pressure area is very likely to move west-northwestwards and intensify into a depression by the 22nd of October in the morning and into a cyclonic storm excuse me, by the 23rd over east central Bay of Bengal. We have updates on this and weather updates from across the world as well in this report.
India's meteorological department on Monday said that the low pressure area over the east central Bay of Bengal and adjoining North Andaman Sea moved west-northwestwards and turned a well-marked low pressure area over the east central Bay of Bengal. The meteorological department said it is very likely to move west-northwestwards and intensify into a depression by 22nd October morning and into a cyclonic storm by 23rd October over the east central Bay of Bengal.
Heavy rainfall is very likely over the coastal district of Odisha on 23rd October. With that heavy rainfall warning, a thunderstorm and lightning is very likely, and gusty wind speed will be around 30 to 40 km per hour.
The Met Department has issued alerts for potentially severe weather conditions associated with this system. Odisha's government has alerted all coastal districts in preparation for the cyclone's landfall and has cancelled leave for its employees and placed all coastal districts on high alert.
Odisha government is in total preparedness in both the energy and agriculture department. Apart from that, the revenue department is also totally prepared. We've taken our reviews. Department has issued necessary instructions to the concerned officers and others. Their leaves have been cancelled and they've all been told to be on high alert.
As Hurricane Oscar made landfall over eastern Cuba on Sunday, it has impacted millions of residents already facing days without power, as fresh attempts to restore much of the nation's electric grid have failed. Schools have been cancelled till Wednesday, and workers who are essential particular jobs only have been permitted to report at workplace on Monday. The island's 10 million people were spending their third night in the dark after the collapse of Cuba's largest power plant crippled the whole national grid. Elsewhere in Italy, heavy rain caused extensive flooding in Italy's northern Emilia-Romagna region, with one reported death in Pianoro near Bologna. More than 2,100 people have been evacuated and about 15,000 people lost power overnight. A sinkhole opened up on an Italian motorway near the Lamezia Terme South interchange due to heavy rains on Monday, swallowing a car. Meanwhile, firefighters carried out dozens of interventions in the southern region for landslides and mudslides. Heavy rain caused extensive flooding in Italy's southern regions on Sunday. Bureau Report, DD India.
Let's also take a look at other stories making news around the world. 4 people, including a child, died when a helicopter crashed into a radio tower in Houston on Sunday night. Aerial footage showed the tower's collapsed remains and helicopter wreckage. Authorities quickly extinguished the fire at the site. The National Transportation Safety Board, that's the NTSB, of the US, is investigating the incident. Australian Senator Lydia Thorpe accused King Charles of genocide against Indigenous Australians during a parliamentary reception in Canberra. As the King finished his speech, Thorpe shouted, and I quote, "You are not our king, you are not sovereign," demanding a treaty. Security intervened, escorting her from the chamber and put a bit of a dampener in King Charles's first visit to Australia after he became monarch. A sinkhole opened up on an Italian motorway near Lamezia Terme South due to heavy rains on Monday, swallowing a car. Fortunately, the passengers were unharmed, according to firefighters. The heavy rain caused significant flooding and landslides across southern Italy. Former Nepalese Deputy Prime Minister and the leader of the Rashtriya Swatantrata Party, that's the RSP, Ravi Lamechhane, has been placed in 6 days of judicial custody for an investigation into organized crime and misappropriation of funds from Pokhras's Doordarshan savings and credit cooperatives. The Kaski District Court authorized the custody after Lamechhane was arrested in Kathmandu on Friday. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Air connectivity scheme UDAN of India completes 8 years.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said that his government no longer compares its performance with that of past governments. It has a forward-looking approach which wants to see India as a developed nation by 2047 when it completes 100 years of independence. Addressing the NDTV World Summit, the Prime Minister said India now has double AI power, artificial intelligence and aspirational India.
आप सब जानते हैं कि ये एआई का दौर है। दुनिया का वर्तमान और भविष्य एआई से जुड़ा हुआ है, लेकिन भारत के पास डबल एआई पावर की एडवांटेज है। और आपके मन में सवाल होगा कि दुनिया पास एक ही एआई है, ये मोदी के पास डबल एआई कहां से आ गई? दुनिया की नजरों में एक ही एआई है, वो है आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस। लेकिन हमारे पास वो तो है ही, दूसरी एआई है एस्पिरेशनल इंडिया। जब एस्पिरेशनल इंडिया और आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस की ताकत मिलती है, तब विकास की गति भी तेज होनी स्वाभाविक है।
India's fast-paced development was the theme of India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi's address at the NDTV World Summit 2024 in Delhi on Monday with the theme The India Century. He touched upon a flurry of initiatives taken by his government in its third term within its first 125 days, such as 30 million dwellings for the poor and starting work on infrastructure projects worth $107 billion. The Prime Minister also said that his government no longer compares its performance with that of past governments.
अब हम बीते हुए कल और आज की तुलना करके आराम फरमाने वाले लोग नहीं है। अब सफलता का मापदंड सिर्फ ये नहीं है कि हमने क्या पाया, अब हमारा आगे का लक्ष्य है हमें कहां पहुंचना है।
Without referring to the ongoing India-Canada row, the Prime Minister also said that India doesn't have taken for granted relations and that all its bilateral ties are built on trust and reliability. He even added that India has shown the world that digital innovation and democratic values can coexist. Bureau Report, DD, India.
And sharing his thoughts on the bilateral relations between India and Bhutan at the NDTV World Summit in New Delhi, Bhutanese Prime Minister Tshering Tobgay said that India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi can stop the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia. He added that Global South has a lot of hope in the leadership of Prime Minister Modi.
The Global South looks to India for leadership, trusts in India's leadership. As a matter of fact, if there's anybody, any country that can sort out today's problems, it is India. Economic problems, the world looks to India as a market. Even Russia and Ukraine, if there's any person who can sort it out, I do believe it is Prime Minister Modi. And therefore, India's century. And the main ingredient of your team, I do believe, is leadership across the board, including a diaspora, but especially that of Prime Minister Modi.
Well, with that thought, let's turn to our guest for tonight, Shekhar Iyer, senior journalist, joining us to talk about the kind of vision that Prime Minister Modi presented at this summit today, where he not only talked about Shekhar, the fact that India has the advantage of double AI, but also how his government has moved on from the erstwhile approach of comparing the present with the past to setting goals for the future and then looking at them and seeing, what kind of milestones have been crossed year after year, month after month. And in terms of milestones, in 125 days of his third term itself, he listed out quite a few.
Well, Gautam, the main point that the Prime Minister put across today is whatever changes that have happened in the last 10 years since he took over as Prime Minister, those changes are not enough. That is the point he kept saying. Look, any government always measures its achievement in terms of what was the situation before it came to office and what is the situation today. But Prime Minister is not satisfied with all the changes that have happened in the last 10 years. He wants the country to look at the future in terms of what are we doing for that future? Where are we taking this country forward? How are we preparing for the challenges of the future? In that context only, he mentioned the importance of the role of artificial intelligence. It's a technological advancement, also a challenge for this country, and how the country is looking at its potential and preparing for the new opportunities that will open up when AI is ruling our lives. So similarly, he spoke of, what were the difficulties or the challenges we faced? Why are we so confident about the future compared to other countries? One is our demography, and the other is, how we overcame some of the severest challenges posed to us, whether it was the COVID pandemic, then the post-COVID stress, inflation and unemployment, or challenges of climate change, or the ongoing wars, whether it is West Asia or in Ukraine, and the disruption of supply chains caused by these wars. And we are also pained by the loss of lives in these conflicts and the geopolitical tensions and conflicts. I mean, we are all the time required to face these things over which we have no control, but over which we have for which we have to prepare all the ways. So that is a kind of leadership that India is showing. That is why it is seen as a country of hope. When all around you find there is a lot of desperation and a lot of confusion.
He also spoke about the goal of making India a developed nation by 2047 and how there's a positivity around it despite a lot of negativity all around us. He said it's become like a people's endeavor, and do you think that he gave enough examples to sort of demonstrate that this is actually the case?
Yes, Gautam, because Viksit Bharat or Developed India by 2047 is a concept that the Prime Minister is pushing very vigorously. So how will India of 2047 be like? And what are the areas that need great thirst? How do we fight poverty better? How do we fight unemployment better? How do we skill our youth? How do we reskill also our labor? I mean, there are several areas where the government of India is working very hard to bring about changes. As the Prime Minister put it, there is not a single sector that has remained untouched by the government initiative, whether it is agriculture, whether it is welfare of farmers, whether it is healthcare, or whether it is infrastructure development. And when it comes to infrastructure development, the Prime Minister says India is looking at scale and speed, because the kind of infrastructure we are looking at or we are developing now is something that should stand good for us for the next 25, 30 years. That is the way we are looking at it. We are not seeing what is the requirement of today, because previously that is how we planned. And by the time of that infrastructure, whether it is highways or flyovers or whatever, or rail connections, by the time they got completed, we found ourselves overwhelmed by the amount of traffic, the amount of the demands on for more better infrastructure. That is why the emphasis for world-class infrastructure. So this is one good example of infrastructure, whether it is roadways, highways, seaports, And the Prime Minister also said how we are expanding civil aviation, how this UDAN has resulted in creation of more and more airports. There are over 100 airports today, when a few years back, you could count the number of major airports. So these are areas where the government is working very vigorously, because we feel the future is approaching us fast and we need to prepare for fast. And the best way to prepare is to actually get to the ground and start working. And that is what has been happening the last 10 years.
And he also mentioned the fact that as far as India's relations are concerned, they're not, taken for granted relations. I don't know if it was an oblique reference to what's happened of late between India and Canada. It could apply to a lot of situations, to a lot of other Western and other countries as well.
Well, Prime Minister did not mention the current standoff that we are seeing regarding our relations with Canada. Of course, our Foreign Minister did mention at the very summit that whatever is happening, one can only say double standard is an understatement. I mean, he put it very well. Dr. Jaishankar said, whatever has happened, the kind of deliberate attempt to create a crisis in what was supposed to be a robust relationship with Canada only goes to show that the Western countries particularly, and their governments and their agencies, are not only inconsiderate towards the threat perception that India sees, when these countries are encouraging some extremist groups in the name of self-expression or freedom of expression. But at the same time, these countries know well that India is not going to take these things lying down. Whatever is a threat to our integrity as a nation, we are going to counter it. And no country can come and preach to us what they themselves don't practice. And without a shred of evidence, we have seen how the whole thing has been made to show as if the government of India is involved in some transnational repression. That's the term they are using. So we are not going to take it. And whatever has happened, we have seen how India has responded to whatever actions Canada took, making it clear, look, there has to be a logic, there has to be a certain decorum in how we deal in foreign relations. And a good friend like Canada should be subjected to, has subjected itself to this because of some political consideration of the present leadership there.
Yes, that seems to be the crux of the problem, and I don't think we'll see the back of it till at least Justin Trudeau's in power, and his term is still at least next year when elections are due in Canada. We'll have to wait and see what happens then. He's quite unpopular in his own country and decidedly more unpopular in India now. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Shikhar Iyer.
Thank you.
Now, Union Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs Nirmala Sitharaman addressed a roundtable on investment opportunities in India at the New York Stock Exchange, the oldest and the largest stock exchange in the world, with around 11 Indian companies listed on it. The roundtable is being attended by various pension funds and other institutional investors and fund managers across the US, forming one of the largest financial systems in the world in terms of total assets under management. Now, India's civil aviation scheme meant to make air travel more accessible and affordable, UDAN, has been extended by another 10 years after completing 8. On the occasion, India's Civil Aviation Minister Ram Mohan Naidu also announced plans to make hoax threats made against airlines a cognizable offence after over 100 bomb threats were reported within a week. The government also plans to amend safety laws and add hoax callers to the no-fly list.
In a major move to tighten aviation security, India's Civil Aviation Minister Kinjarapu Ram Mohan Naidu has announced strict action against hoax threats targeting Indian airlines. To combat this growing menace, the government is planning to make hoax threats a cognizable offence.
At multiple levels, we have been having these meetings, and everyone we have taken in suggestions, opinions of all of them. And from the ministry, we have thought of some legislative action also, if it is required, which direction should be moved in. And we have come to the conclusion that there are two areas that we can explore. One is the amendment in aircraft security rules. Once we catch hold of the perpetrator who is behind this, we want to put them in the no-fly list. We are definitely pushing forward to bring a change in the Suwaska Act also, so that it addresses for these kind of offences which happen when the flight is on ground, so that we can take strict action on them, we can make it cognizable offence. The government has announced an extension of the UDAN scheme also for another 10 years. India's airport network has doubled from 74 operational airports in 2014 to an impressive 157 in 2024, with the bold vision of expanding to 350 airports by 2047. So, taking a cue from the success that UDAN has achieved over the past 8 years, we are envisioning the UDAN scheme for furthermore 10 years. We want to take it forward for 10 years because in the next 5 years we are planning to start 50 more airports or enhance the capacity of the existing airports. We are making continuous changes in the policy to encourage more MRO sector to come into the country. We have done that for a long time and now we are speeding up that process. Industry is also happy with the changes or the policy changes that the government is making. So we see a growth that what is $2 billion industry right now in the country for MRO is going to grow up to 4 billion. It's going to double itself in the next 7 years. Over the past 8 years, 601 routes have been operationalized, connecting 71 airports, 13 heliports, and 2 water aerodromes. This has led to the travel of more than 1.44 crore passengers on more than 2.8 lakh flights. UDAN has played a vital role in the rise of regional airlines, generating jobs and boosting tourism. Tapush Bhattacharya's report, Daily India.
Well, India is celebrating a year of UDAN, an initiative that has transformed India's aviation sector. Prime Minister Modi highlighted the achievements made under the scheme over the years, noting that around 3 lakh flights, that is about 300,000 flights, have been operated under it, carrying 150 million common citizens so far.
उड़ान योजना के तहत करीब 3 लाख फ्लाइट्स उड़ान भर चुकी हैं। इनमें 1.5 करोड़ आम नागरिक सफर कर चुके हैं। आज 600 से अधिक रूट्स उड़ान के तहत और इनमें से ज्यादातर छोटे शहरों को कनेक्ट करते हैं। 2014 में देश में 70 के आसपास एयरपोर्ट थे। आज देश में एयरपोर्ट की संख्या 150 को पार कर गई है। उड़ान योजना ने दिखाया है कि कैसे समाज की एस्पिरेशन विकास को गति देती।
And now it's time to get you some sporting updates as well. Well, India's Deepika Kumari won the silver medal in the women's recurve event at the Archery World Cup final in Tlaxcala region of Mexico. The 30-year-old Indian archer lost to the People's Republic of China's Li Jiamen 6-0 in the final. In the quarterfinals, Deepika Kumari defeated China's Yang Xiaoli in straight sets. She followed it up with a 6-4 victory over Mexico's Alejandra Valencia. This was Deepika's 6th medal in the Archery World Cup finals. Aryna Sabalenka has returned to top spot in the Women's Tennis Association rankings after leapfrogging Iga Swiatek. Sabalenka's return to the top spot has set up a thrilling end to the season, with next month's WTA finals in Saudi Arabia likely to prove decisive in the race to end the year as world number 1. Sabalenka defended her Australian Open title and added the US Open trophy to her cabinet as well. Sabalenka currently has 9,706 points, while Swiatek has 9,665, ahead of the finals, which will offer 1,500 points. The finals will be held in Riyadh from the 2nd to the 9th of next month and feature top 8 single players and doubles teams. Now, a group of more than 100 professional women's soccer players have sent an open letter to FIFA urging the world governing body to end its partnership with oil and gas conglomerate Saudi's Aramco. In April, FIFA signed a 4-year deal which will see Aramco become a worldwide partner, including in major tournaments such as the 2026 World Cup and the Women's World Cup in 2027. Saudi Arabia has invested heavily in sports like soccer, that's football, Formula 1 and golf in the last few years. While critics accuse the kingdom of using its public investment fund to sports wash its human rights record, the country denies accusations of human rights abuses and says it protects its national security through its laws. And that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS platforms. The QR code that's just popped up on the screen is for scanning so that you can download the app. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy and from office here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.